Welcome to our class. We are learning ASHLAG KABALLAH from the introductory articles that a student is supposed to learn before they start learning Zohar, before they start learning the actual Kabbalistic text. These are all introductory articles to try to explain to people exactly what the wisdom is. And in this class, we're doing little excerpts. And so I thought that, as always, we should start from the very beginning again, because people hear things and there's so many misunderstandings about what Kabbalah is, and people hear all these strange things and people have all these strange beliefs. And so I thought that it would be good to start from the beginning. So first thing I want to do is I want to read two excerpts that I think will help focus us on understanding what Kabbalah is. Okay, so here's the first one. It says, "We were created for one purpose, to experience the presence of God. There is nothing else, not in this world and not in the world to come. We are created for one purpose, to experience the presence of God. There is nothing else, not in this world and not in the world to come." Okay? And here's the second excerpt that I want to start with. I'll read it again. I'll read this one, the second one. Basically, all day long we think about what we can do for ourselves. All 24 hours revolve around this. This needs to be the opposite. To wake up in the morning and think, what can I do for others? Okay, let me read it again. Basically, all day long, we think about what we can do for ourselves. All 24 hours revolve around this. This needs to be the opposite. To wake up in the morning and think, what can I do for others? Okay, so this sounds very quaint and very, like something that you would put on a poster, but something that's very either unrealistic or undesirable. And so we are told that what is Kabbalah? Kabbalah is called the inner aspect of Torah, and it is also called the Torah of the Geula, of the redemption. And we are told that this book, called the Zohar, the Book of Radiance, is this secret book that when we decode it and we understand what's inside this book, we'll figure it out that it's a instruction manual for achieving higher consciousness and for achieving the purpose of creation. So the question that I would ask is, from these two excerpts that we just read, is the first one says that the whole entire purpose of creation is to experience the presence of God. And then the second one says, the second thing we read just says that we should care about other people. And so my question is, what does caring about other people have to do with higher consciousness, and what does caring about other people have to do with all of these very, very lofty ideas? And then, people are, trying to figure out, every which way to, fix the world and fix the world's problems. And we're in terrible crisis now with wars. And here, it sounds like a very simple thing, but I want to imagine for a moment that you got together with, let's say, 100 people. And these 100 people, you lived in a community, and all other 99 people in this community cared completely about you and cared completely about taking care of you and making you happy. Can you imagine living in such a place? And and what a world like that would be. And so it seems very, very, unlikely that that's our future, that we're going to live in a future where everybody loves and cares about and worries about and thinks about fulfilling everybody else's desire. But if we really think about it just as a mind experiment, we would realize that that would create a very, very beautiful world if we were to actually live for other people's happiness. When you do it for somebody that you're madly in love with, it makes sense, right? And you do it for your children, it makes sense. And you do it for your best friends, it makes sense, right? But can you imagine if you could somehow expand that circle and everybody else around you was also expanding that circle of feeling connected, feeling at unity, at balance with people around them, that it would immediately, that would be the one missing ingredient that would turn the world into a very, very beautiful place. And so what does that have to do with experiencing God? That seems like also a very complicated issue. I mean, what are the two? How do you put these two things together? So the answer is that we have a very, very simple, oversimplified, and actually inaccurate idea of what God is. But if we just took the word God away and just put all of the attributes, God's attributes, unity, balance, peace, love, transcendence, right? If we put all of these words, wholeness, right, simplicity, if we put all these words that we use to ascribe God in Torah Judaism, then we realize that if achieving all those things and a relationship with the creator of the universe and a relationship with those lights in Kabbalah. We call them lights. All of these attributes, all of these feelings, all of these levels of attainment. If we actually had a way to do that, keep in mind that in all of history, if you looked at all of the philosophies in the secular world, and that's not even the right way of saying it, but if you looked at all of the over the millennia of all the smartest people who were evaluating human nature, they would tell you that it's completely and utterly impossible for that to happen. Even today, I was watching Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris having a conversation, two philosophers, and I'm not sure Jordan Peterson's a philosopher, but he's a thinker, and they were discussing this, and they were discussing how, it doesn't seem to be in human nature for us to actually do this. And so that is why we've been waiting 6,000 years in the development of human consciousness to get to a place where this looks like something that is just beginning to seem like a possibility. And so in Kabbalah we have one of the first terms we learn is a point in the heart. A point in the heart is an awakening inside of a person who says to themselves, what is this world for? What is this for? When you're young, you don't need a reason for why there's a world because you're having a great time. You're young and you're healthy. And so the reason why you're alive is to have a good time. And so that's, ironically, that is one of the purposes of creation. God wants us to have a good time. And yet, to have the highest level of good time, we have to make sure that we're taking care of everybody and the whole planet and all of nature. And so how do we do that? And so this is, as unlikely as it might sound to the beginner, this is a methodology, the Kabbalah, Torah and Mitzvot it's called, but the inner aspect of Torah and Mitzvot is actually a methodology for how we climb out of our egos and unite with all of existence. And that's what we're learning here. So let's just keep going, and I'll just keep reading excerpts, and we can discuss them. If anybody here has something to say, please just raise your hand or call out. Okay. Awareness of our disconnection from God enables us to be brought close to God. This is the way we progress spiritually. Awareness of our disconnection from God enables us to be brought close to God. This is the way we progress spiritually. Okay, so there's a lot of Kabbalah here, but it's just also very intuitive and very natural to understand that is that, you have to whet your appetite. If you have something, if you eat 3 pieces of pizza, you no longer want pizza. So what makes you want pizza is not having pizza. And so the way that God created the world is that we are in a place, a very low world, a material world, where we feel like we are outside of fulfillment. Something is missing and something is lacking in our existence. And if it's just not the fact that you personally want to be richer and you want to be healthier and you want to be more popular and you want to be taller and you want to have a nicer house, those are all like level 1 desires. But if you start to think about other people and you say, even though I have a nice car, somebody else doesn't have a nice car. Even though I have health care, somebody else doesn't have health care. And so as we become more evolved, we start to worry about other people more. And so we realize that if the whole world came into balance and unity and love of friends, it's called in Kabbalah, if we loved each other, if we loved our those around us, then we would, not only would we increase our own level of happiness, but we would reveal godliness in the world. And this is not something that we're talking about like, in these old constructs of like religion, of where you see like a painting of angels and things like that. This is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is an awareness. If somebody said, if you're a teenager and you fall in love with somebody, it's not something that you need to prove to somebody. It's something that you feel. It's something that you experience. It's something that you attain. And so, and it's magical and it's super real. It's higher than physical realities, right? When you love somebody, it's more real to you than a car or a book, right? It becomes something that transcends even, it transcends intellect and it transcends your physical existence. And so that's what we're talking about, these higher degrees of consciousness where we can feel each other. And that is the work in Kabbalah. And it seems like, people think it's something else, but that's what it is. And so one of the funny things is that if a person hears that this is what it is, sometimes they don't want it. And that's natural. We say, in Kabbalah that the harder you work, the more God shows you that you don't really want this thing. And so Kabbalah is the method for how do we increase our desire for spirituality. And so those of us who are Torah observant Jews, we know that the Torah, the exterior of the Torah is a moving meditation that organizes and balances and gives meaning and purpose to every single action that we take throughout the day, right? All the laws in the Torah. How do we get up in the morning, and how do we eat, and how do we go about our day? How do we work? What are the rules for making money? These are every single thing that we do in Torah Judaism has structure to it, and so the internal aspect of Torah is built very similarly. Is that if I want to increase my desire to love God and to love goodness and to love unity and to love balance and to love all these things, I have to cultivate that. And so that is the practice of Torah and Mitzvot, is that we live in a community where people have these desires and we influence each other to want these things. And then we study and we start to influence each other, and slowly but surely, step by step, we start to have internal awakenings, and we start to feel that there is a actual non-physical space outside of ourselves, and that this place in between us, the communal feelings and the feelings of the other, are actually the hardware for experiencing God. And so this all sounds very theoretical and sounds maybe silly to some people, or sounds like unlikely. But the study of Kabbalah is a study of attainment, meaning that everything that happens inside of you, and you don't care what other people are thinking because it's happening to you. And so if you start to feel happy with your life, you don't need anybody to tell you that you're happy with your life. And if you're not happy with your life, you don't need anybody to tell you that, and nothing they're going to say is going to change how you're feeling and where your mind and where your heart is where you are, right? And so this is it's called a science, Kabbalah, but it's an internal science, one where you are doing an experiment on yourself. And so we say the creator in Hebrew, the name for the creator is Boreh, which means creator. Boreh is the creator, but it can also be broken up into two words, which means come and see. So in Kabbalah, we're busy with proving to ourselves whether or not what is being said here is true or not. So it's all about your internal world, and no one can give it to you and no one can take it away from you.
You can have a certain influence on your mood to make you more happy. Like, for instance, if you have music that you like, you get more happy.
Okay.
So meaning that if you can influence it a little bit.
Yes, that is the study of Kabbalah, is how do you influence yourself to want these revelations of these higher states of consciousness. What do we do to unlock these gates of consciousness? And so we've learned, and we can say it now, is that we are born, God created us as receivers, takers. So the reason why we feel separated, the Kabbalists tell us, from godliness, from the divine, from these higher states of consciousness, from love and unity and communion with all of nature and everything that's around us. And how come I can only feel my own brain, but I don't feel your brain? How can I feel my heart, but I can't feel your heart, right? But if I'm in love with you, then I do feel your heart. And I do, right? I think about how you feel, and I can feel, if I see you're not happy, I become unhappy, right? So how do we expand that? How do we do that? And that is a very, very good question, and that's what we're trying to learn here. But to finish the point, we are in a state of reception, meaning that we want things for ourselves, and God is in the opposite aspect to us. God wants to give us. So people have a hard time with the word God because the word God itself has been corrupted by modern thinking. But imagine that the Kabbalists tell us that the force that is being applied to creation, to all of us, is the aspect, is the force of love. All you have to do is think about how you feel about your child. If you love your child and you want your child to be successful, you don't only treat your child with rewards, you also sometimes punish your child because you want to try to influence them, so you have a carrot and a stick. So if we start to become aware, we would notice that that is the way the universe, the world, the higher forces are acting on us. If something good happens to us, it might make us go in a certain direction. If something bad happens to us, it might make us go in a different direction, right? So that's how we are propelled through our lives, by carrot and stick. And so the way that God created the world is that we are opposite Him, and we have an opportunity by climbing this ladder. We become more and more like God, right? And then as we become more and more like God, we feel God more. And so this is just exactly how it would be in the physical world. If you had a friend and you met somebody that you liked in high school, and then you became better and better and better and better friends, you become more and more like them, and you'd know and you'd have more and more of the same hobbies and the same interests and the same way of speaking, and all these things would happen. And the more and more you did this, the more and more you become similar to your friend, right? So that's just normal. So the more we give and the more we think about giving, the more we feel God's presence. And so people say, you have many, smart people who say God doesn't exist, and don't tell me He does. And they get very upset if you start to tell them it does. They get upset. They say there's no proof of that. And so the way the Kabbalists tell us, the way that God created the world, is that God hid Himself from us so that we can do the work and we can have a sense of identity. And so this material plane of existence is called olam. The word olam in Hebrew also, if you change the letters up, or not the letters, but the pronunciation, it means helam, I think is the word, which means hidden. So the world hides God from us so that we can reveal God in the world, and that is the work. And so we are, each level of consciousness, you have to do something to reveal. It's like a locked door, and then you step through the gate, and when you step into the gate, you see a whole nother layer of creation, of reality, of consciousness. And so this is precisely what we are studying here. Okay, let me keep reading. We heard many times from the Rebbe. This is Rabbi Baruch Shalom ASHLAG, I believe. Maybe it's the Baal Sulam he's talking about. Anytime we have a thought about God, we need to appreciate that the thought is given to us from God, okay? So since we are in a place of tremendous darkness, meaning hiddenness, we don't feel that God exists. We feel that we exist, right? Yeah. And so we want proof that God exists, and we want, some scientific experiment that we could do that shows us that God is really there, right? If you have any thought at all about God, and if you don't like the word God, if you have a problem with the word God, if you have a thought about transcendence, or about doing something selflessly for somebody else, or just being a better person, if you have a thought like that, you can be happy already, because that is the beginning of your elevation, that is God is sending you that it's so unnatural for us to have any thoughts of doing anything except for ourselves. The natural state where we are in this world is to truly think about ourselves. And so if we have a momentary, even one thought of God, this holy Kabbalist here is telling us that you should be happy with just that, because that is an indication that God is reaching out to you. Okay? The more we feel distant from God, the more we feel in need of God's help. Then we are able to receive the divine light of Emunah. Okay, let me read. Emunah means faith. Okay? The more we feel distant from God, the more we feel in need of God's help. Then we are able to receive the divine light of Emunah, of faith. Okay? So this is something that we have to talk about. If you started to study, let's say you were studying math, or you were trying to go to the gym to work out, as you worked harder and harder, you would become better and better at this thing, correct? Okay. But you'd also, if you were working out at the gym, every time you got stronger, you would add more weight. And so what happens, which is maybe counterintuitive in this wisdom, in this methodology, is that as you start to feel that you're far away from God, you get twice as much of that feeling that you're far away from God. And then you think, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I feel like I'm becoming a worse person the more I study Kabbalah. That happens. People feel like, the more they study this, they say, oh my goodness, now I really, really see that I'm really far away. And the more you do it, the further away you feel. And so this is because we said already, is that we talk about lights and vessels in Kabbalah, is that the bigger your cup, the bigger your desire, the bigger the lacking, the more the fulfillment. So if you work on yourself this much, this is how much light you're going to get. But if you work on yourself twice as much, then you're going to get twice as much light. And so as you get the muscles and you start to do this, that's why Kabbalah is studied with a group of people, because otherwise you'd become very overwhelmed very quickly. So to feel like, oh my goodness, I feel very bad. So when we work with a group of people, we can support each other and let each other know that that's exactly what's supposed to happen, is that you start, the more we feel distant from God, the more we feel in need of God's help. So that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And so the more you study, the more you see these people, these rabbis. I remember when I was a kid, I was terrified. I see these rabbis, and they have these beards, white beards, and they're sitting hunched over, and they're reading a book all day. It doesn't look like fun. I mean, I look like, I'm a kid. I want to ride motorcycles, and I want to go, see the world, and I want to have a good time. And here, they're telling me that I have to follow this rabbi, and he's sitting over like this. But we have to understand is that these levels of spiritual attainment are hidden from the outside world, and they are extremely pleasurable, many more times pleasurable than what we have now, but we don't have the vessels to enjoy these things. And so that's when I started learning Zohar with this rabbi in Brooklyn, and the first thing he said was, he's passed away, he's actually buried in Tzfat. His name is Rabbi, let me see if I can remember his name, Rabbi Mueller. Wow. And he was in the Beit Medrash of Rabbi Shalom ASHLAG, and I looked for all the teachers of ASHLAG, and I found him in Brooklyn, and I went to his house. And so the first lesson we learned, he said, you can't treat somebody to a pizza if they don't care about pizza. Mm-hmm. So if somebody doesn't like pizza, they don't know what it is, you can't say, I'm going to buy you pizza for your birthday, because the person will be, I don't want pizza. So the problem with the hurdle with Avodas Hashem, with Pnimius Torah, with climbing the ladder of consciousness, is that we have to cultivate the desire for spirituality in order to access spirituality. So I have to want to become good, and I have to understand why I want to be good. So let's just read this thing again that we said, the first thing we said here, because it's very, very important. Let's see if I can find it. Basically, all day long, we think about what we can do for ourselves. All 24 hours revolve around this. This needs to be the opposite. To wake up in the morning and think, what can I do for others? But you have to be honest about what we're talking about here. I don't want to do that. Let's just be honest. Mm-hmm. Look around you. You bought your clothes for you. You didn't buy me clothes. Mm-hmm. Why? We're living in a community together. And why would I want this? And so that's the secret, is that this is much, much better than what we have now. But we just don't feel it. We don't see it. We haven't experienced it, so we don't know. And so that's where we have to teach each other. It's this is very intuitive wisdom. If I say to you, have you ever been in love? And you say yes. And I say, imagine you had that feeling for everybody around you, and everybody around you had that feeling for you. And imagine when your friend went to the mall to buy something, instead of buying himself a shirt, he bought you a shirt. Now imagine that, just living like that, and start to get used to living like that, you would realize that the entire world would be different. And you'd probably have more shirts, you'd have more stuff, because everybody would be buying things for you. And then you know what would happen? When you went to the mall, you would buy things for other people. But we so are outside of that reality that we can't imagine doing that. And every time people try to do that, you have Marxism and communism, and you have these things. And every time they try to do it, they seem to get into very, very big trouble in history. And not to get people off the track, but Marxism, the people who studied who brought Marxism to the world, they were studying Kabbalah, a lot of them. And the people who made a lot of mistakes throughout history were studying Kabbalah, and then they didn't understand what they were learning, and they went down a road that was not good. And so that's why there's a lot of issues about studying Kabbalah, there's also issues about how the outside of the Torah and the inside of the Torah have to work together.
The outside and inside work together, meaning the Mishnah and the
I'm saying the way that we practice halacha on the outside is we are obligated and forced to do things. So if you get married, you sign a contract that obligates you to do certain things. But that part is the exterior of the marriage. The inside of the marriage is how you feel about each other. And so those two things they work together, but they're oppositional. So if you have a good marriage, you not only have the outside is everybody's following the rules on the outside, right? You bring home the money to the thing. You don't have another family somewhere else that you're hiding. You're following the rules of the marriage, but you're also working on how you feel about the other person. Sometimes you feel good about them, sometimes you feel bad about them, and you're constantly working to increase the relationship, to increase the feelings and the bond of the relationship, right? So these two things go together. So just to clarify what I just said about the pitfalls of studying Kabbalah and of these issues, is that what usually people do, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is very, very smart and is always trying to stop you from doing. That's what they said in Mitzrayim. Paro would let you do whatever you want as long as you were working for the ego. Paro is the ego. But once you start to try to transcend the ego, that's when Paro starts to get angry. It's with yourself. If you want to be nice to everybody because you want to be more popular, no problem. You can do it all day long. You'll have no problem. But if you try to do it to be nice and make somebody else popular, you're going to see how hard it is to do. So just to make that point, to finalize the point that I was saying, is that in Torah and Mitzvot, you need to have Hashem, and you need to have the people, and you need to have the Torah. You need to have all of these components. So what happened in Marxism is that they took God out of the picture, and they tried to do. You see this with Sam Harris. He's a philosopher and he's an atheist. He says he's an atheist. That he wants to make the world a good place. It's called secular humanism. He wants to make the world a good place, but without God. So the Torah comes and says that is a recipe for disaster, because what's going to happen is you're going to turn yourself into God, and you're going to become the God. And so you see, anywhere they try to have communism, no matter how it's all supposed to be about everybody sharing and everybody loving everybody else, but what really happens is that people remain corrupted. So the more we study Kabbalah, the more we live life of Torah mitzvos, slowly but surely we have discernment, it's called, inside, where we understand that it says in the Gemara that till the day you die, you don't trust yourself. And so there's a way to climb this ladder of consciousness, and the way to do it is, one of the rules that we have to understand is that without God's intervention, without something happening to us from outside, the Lubavitch Rebbe says you can't break yourself out of prison, and Egypt was a prison, right? And so the way that the God created the world is that at each one of these levels, you have to be judged that you're doing it for the right reason. And until you do that, you don't enter to the higher level. Now this is complicated more because there's everything that exists on the side of Kedusha, there also exists on the side of Tumah in spirituality. So people can figure out a way to climb the ladder and still be selfish, which is very dangerous, which is very, very, that's something that makes people, there's many, many, many reasons why the rabbis are weary of Kabbalah, and so this is some of the reasons. And so I know that I'm saying a lot, and there's a lot of, each one of these little statements could be a conversation in itself, but I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Did it make sense? Okay, good. Let me just read one more and then we can stop, okay? Because we have another class starting here soon. Here's something very simple that is short, not simple, but outer reality is a reflection of our inner reality. The Hakdamah, the introductory article of the wisdom of truth. That's where this statement is from. Outer reality is a reflection of our inner reality. Okay? So we talked about this before. There's like if you imagine, let's say, like a camera lens, and it's focused at, outside. It's like 30 feet in front of you. Mm-hmm. But you can change the focal length so that it's focused at 15 feet, right? And so what we have to do in Kabbalah is we have to start to see how our inner world is really what is projecting out into the world around us. So people say, I don't like the war, it's the Democrats' fault. I don't like the war, it's the Republicans' fault. I don't like this, it's Trump's fault. Or I don't like this, right? So everybody has a reason why there's trouble in the world, but the trouble is always somebody else. And so until a person awakens to realize that what they're actually looking at is that's not what they're seeing. It feels like that's what you're seeing, but really what you're seeing is everything that's going on inside of you and everybody else is manifesting in front of our eyes. But what we see in front of our eyes is the result. We have something called it in Kabbalah, roots and branches. Roots and branches. The thing, where does it start and where does the thing end up? And so when you see things in reality, it's already the manifest level of all of our collective desires and thoughts and actions, right? Everything that we feel and everything that we want is projected out, and that's the world we see. So what we're seeing now is a terrible war where people are saying, are the Jews good or are the Jews bad? Is Israel good or Israel bad? Does Israel have a right to exist or does Israel not have a right to exist? So when we start to study Kabbalah and we start to do this regularly and we start to retrain our perception, we'll realize that is what's going on inside of us. I am wondering if God is good or God is bad. I am wondering if Jews are good or Jews. I'm Jewish. I'm wondering if I'm good or bad. I'm saying all day long, am I really a good person? Do I really want to be good? Or would I rather just be bad? Why am I doing all this stuff? Like, I'm trying to decide. And then I see in the world that that's what I see people discussing. Yeah. Do you understand? So we are creating that reality. And so it says in the Gemara that we have to know that the entire world was created for you. So what does that mean? Yeah. Your experience of the world, the way God created the world, is that every single thing that is happening, that you're experiencing, is for you. It's a movie made for you, and only you can do an action. The action could be changing your thought, changing the way you speak, changing the way you do something, or even changing your desire for what you like. Do I want to run after a car, or do I run after good relationships with people, right? So when these things, that is the only place where a change can actually be made. I think that if I buy the right sweater, then that's going to make me popular. I think if I fight with this guy, I'm going to make more money at work because this guy's like intruding on my business, right? Mm-hmm. That is not the truth. That's not the Torah. This is from the book called the Hakdama, the introductory article of the wisdom of truth. The truth is that it's really manifest from inside of you and only you for you. And for me, everything is being manifest from me and only for me. And the only thing I can do is change something inside of myself, and that's what changes the reality. It doesn't appear like that. What it appears like is that something happens and that affects me. Somebody's not nice to me and I feel bad. Or somebody gets the job instead of me and I don't make money. That's the way it appears. He's telling you that's not really what's happening. It's like a computer program. And so we have to learn that if I'm complaining about Trump, or I'm complaining about Biden, or I'm complaining about the Arabs, or I'm complaining about the Jews, I have not yet awakened to the true reality that we're living in, the matrix that we're living in. I have not yet understood what's actually happening. So by studying Kabbalah and by studying these articles, and then ultimately by studying Zohar, these are instructions from people who have achieved higher states of consciousness and awareness and truth, and they see reality in a real way, and they are writing to us in a way that is supposed to help us reprogram our reality and our thoughts and our desires. And so that's what the wisdom of Kabbalah is. That's what we're doing. And the whole Torah is working like that. But the thing about Kabbalah is that it's the most direct, revealed conversation about what we're doing all the times. If you're studying halacha or you're studying, some Gemara, you're not necessarily having this conversation, even though those are all the components of what we're doing. We don't necessarily understand. And the reason, we said this before, the reason why the it's built like that. The reason why the sages structured it, it says that they mixed up all of the stuff. They didn't tell you the instructions like the Baal Shem is telling you the instructions in order, but they didn't tell you that way. They mixed it all up. Is because the truth of matter is that until a person awakens to the desire to know the truth and to escape materialism and to transcend their ego, telling people this stuff is actually not helpful. That's why for 6,000 years it was secret. Why was it secret? Because if somebody wants a Ferrari and they want to be the most popular person, telling them that there's a secret to the universe is that you have to be good and love everybody and transcend your ego, it would have the opposite effect on them. They would use whatever you tell them to try to feed their ego. Okay, so there you have it. I don't know. This class was really, I don't know, we went all over the place and we said a lot of very deep things. I hope it made sense. And sometimes it doesn't make sense and you just have these conversations and it somehow, it like falls on you like rain and you kind of, it through some kind of magical, mystical process, it gets into you. Okay, thank you everybody.